If you truly want fiat to accelerate and disappear, doing those kinds of things just accelerates it. I'm going to negotiate in the worthless fiat currency price because $5,000 today not only goes down in purchasing power, the Bitcoin actually appreciates. I really didn't know a lot about Bitcoin when I decided I'm going all in. I just knew that the dollar was broken. I knew that I would feel better, sleep better at night, regardless of the volatility dollar amount, because I knew the dollar was worthless. The fact is, I'm not looking to lose over the next 30 years, 90% of my energy and time. Life is too short. Bitcoin gave me just enough cushion to make that switch and feel that way, to be able to decide how I spend my time, what I do, who I do it with, where I go. That sovereignty, that feeling that you control your monetary, financial destiny is very rewarding. It's scary because, you have to take responsibility, but who is it that said responsibility is freedom? It's not just plug in miners into power and print magic internet money, right? It's gotten a little more complicated than that now.
Hi, David. How are you doing? Anything fine on your end?
Hey, good. Again, just to tell you personally, been following you for a long time. Love your work. Haven't had a chance to meet you in person. I think maybe we've been at a couple of the same events, but, just never got to connect officially. But thanks very much for reaching out. Love what you do. And the more, it can get a little daunting, but I'm a firm believer that we need more Bitcoin education, more podcasts, more videos, more content. If it wasn't for the stuff that you and, Nico Simply Bitcoin and Breedlove and BTC Sessions, if it wasn't for your content, the content creators, I wouldn't know how to self-custody, right? I wouldn't know how to set up a hardware wallet. I'm a hardware guy, but mostly on the infrastructure side. So whether it's finance or actual, the technical side of the chain and the network, I just really appreciate everything you guys do. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's very sweet of you. It's very important, the education side of things. And some people say like, oh, there's too much already. I honestly think, and I encourage actually everyone on my podcast that comes on here and he has no presence online, because I have a few people, I think probably 50 to 60 actually, quite some amount of people that have never been on any podcast before. So they kind of got started with mine. I always encourage them to just get started with something. Like, if you don't have video, you can write something. Education comes in so many different forms. You don't have to have a YouTube channel or anything like that, because maybe you're not comfortable sharing your face. You can just have a anonymous account and write stuff down. There's no excuse for not educating other people.
Yeah. And I was thinking the other day, just someone asked me, what kept me in Bitcoin, right? Because I did not have there was some success right off the bat. I was working with a company that was already established, so that made it easy. But when I came in, I wasn't even a Bitcoiner, right? They just assumed because I was working with some Bitcoiners through this company that I already knew everything. It was really those people that orange pilled me, and it had nothing to do with, they didn't target me and say, hey, Dave's not a Bitcoiner, let's go work on him, right? Let's orange pill him. It was just them being them. And so a couple of years ago, when I thought about taking a job outside and going back to kind of a 9-to-5 kind of traditional job, the reason I turned it down, I didn't even have a specific prospect ready to go in Bitcoin, another project to work on or anything. So it was the thing that made me turn it down was the Bitcoiners I was working with. Bitcoiners are the best part about Bitcoin. It's fantastic. It's an amazing invention, discovery, whichever, you choose to argue on that side. But really, it's a tool. And the Bitcoiners are the ones that are actually using it to do amazing things. And so it's what you actually do with it that is so important, the freedom that it gives you. So, and that comes specifically through Bitcoiners and nothing else. So.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Is there actually something that you're seeing there's still a lot of work to do. We have to do in the Bitcoin education sphere. Anything specific that you're looking at, or is it is it just we have to get more of all of it?
So, well, more of all of it is the easy answer. But if you dig down into it, I think there's kind of maybe 3 tenets that you should focus on. My goal is on the hardware side, on the network side, right? It's an education of miners on, how the pools work, how templates work, and that you can actually, take a hold of it. Ocean's done some interesting things with that, especially the new data, program. So it gives you more self-sovereignty on the mining side is very important to me. That's just an education reason. It's not just plug in miners into power and print magic internet money, right? It's gotten a little more complicated than that now. And so that's one. The second one is just the overall general populace in education, right? So like I love BTC Sessions and what he does. I had been working, believe it or not, I'd been working in Bitcoin for probably a year and a half and had been stacking on exchanges before I realized, oh, this is not my Bitcoin, right? So I went through and found, that's when I actually found him, wasn't referred to him or anything, just found him on YouTube by searching for, instructional videos. And I started at his very beginning and started kind of going through until I found what I needed, got a cold card, used his tutorials to get that set up, right? Um, that feeling is so freeing to the average person to understand that this is actually mine, right? It's like having cash in your, shoved in your mattress at home as opposed to in the bank, only it's so much safer, it's so much more convenient. So that sovereignty, that feeling that you control your monetary financial destiny is very rewarding. It's scary because you have to take responsibility, but taking that responsibility, who is it that said responsibility is freedom? I think it's might be Jocko Willink or somebody that I read that said responsibility is freedom, or discipline is freedom, right? I think that's what he said. So that's very important on that education side. Just so the more people that understand this, the better all of the Bitcoin development in the entire ecosphere is going to be. And then my focus, kind of the third, is really just Bitcoiners are great at figuring out new things to do, how to do them, doing things that have never been done before, right? Uh, and then there's a lot of people that are out there from outside that are kind of bringing money and finance into the Bitcoin space, but they're doing it on a massive level that's almost too big, right? Like all the pubcos that go public, whether they IPO or they go through a SPAC, whatever the case may be, um, they have these just massive organizations, strategy, right? Michael Saylor, all these people that are doing this. We need more what I'd call just family offices, high net worth individual, private equity to come into it. And I'm starting to see that on the mining side. The infrastructure side makes sense. There's a lot of accelerated depreciation people can take. So if you're worried about your tax burden, you can get into mining at a discount, essentially, right? That's money that would go to the U.S. government, play hardware.
I think your recording has stopped for some reason.
Am I there? Hey, Rob. Am I there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know
You're
what
here
happened.
again.
Just got kicked off the network or something.
Interesting. Yeah, it said it stopped recording on your side, but yeah, it has sometimes it has hiccups. It's okay. It's just I'll glue it together later.
No problem. We'll do it in production, post production. But so you're seeing all this. I want to bring in my focus for the last really 6 months to a year has been bringing in private equity, taking investors who want to be more vertical. Maybe they even want to own the energy production up, and walking them through the process, introducing them to the right people to help make that work. Sometimes it's as simple as helping them find miners, but more often than that, it's helping them develop a site. So we'll negotiate hosting agreements or joint ventures. We'll go find power. Uh, we'll evaluate. Do we want to do air? Do we want to do immersion? Do we want to do hydro? And just take a look at all of that, and then I'll evaluate that with the investors, and then we get a site set up and we get up and running. Um, and all of those things I think are very important to a more decentralization of the network and making sure that we have more parties that have a say in the pools, how we mine from an infrastructure, what type of energy we use. All of that should be evenly distributed and represented, um, to make sure that there's less single points of failure, right? There's always attack vectors that need to be that can be compromised, but the more spread out, not just the usage of Bitcoin and who uses it and how you use it, but also on the mining side, what energy you use, where they're located, the size of this and scope of how they're mining. All of that plays a role uh, in the success, long-term success of the network.
Do you think we currently have a kind of a problem with too much concentration at the mining pool level and the templates? And you mentioned the Ocean protocol and Ethereum.
I'm not as worried about centralization maybe as a lot of others are itself. I'm more worried about transparency. Um, they The problem is a lack of transparency can lead to severe centralization, and vice versa, right? So what I like about what Ocean is doing is, for the first time, I can know where my hash rate is going to. And I think this is kind of the key. So, trying to think of an easy way to explain it, right? If you consider the network to be like a body, or the central, maybe the network itself is like a brain and a central nervous system, right? And it's built along the network, and the bones and the structure is Bitcoin itself and the end users that use it, right? So we're moving Bitcoin from one area to another. The network, the central nervous system, is what enables the signals to say, hey, we're going to take this over here and we're going to move it over here. We're going to do this work. We're going to move the body from here to here, whatever the case may be. The hash rate is really the muscle that kind of allows that to happen, right? So and up to this point, miners have just been providing the muscle, and they haven't really concerned themselves. Well, that's not true. It's changing pretty rapidly, but in the past, it was so new, and the system was a little more rudimentary. So you would take and put your hash rate online, pick the pool that you think was most profitable as far as dollar amounts or currency goes, and say, this is where I'm going. And that was necessary because you're investing large amounts of money in a asset that had not yet proven itself. Uh, it was a very risk on asset. And so if you couldn't handle the volatility, you had to be as smart as you possibly could, just with your bottom line, what your costs and your P&L would be. Um, and because it could just completely put you under if you were over leveraged. And we saw that happen a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. Um, People would get over leveraged, volatility would shake them loose. They'd get margin called, and they'd be gone, right? Or out, or they'd have to restructure, whatever the case may be. Now these miners are taking a look at it and understanding that at the pool level, we should be providing a lot more feedback as to how the muscles are used, right? So it's like you had a nervous system that was one way, sending to the muscle, saying, muscle, move this way. But if I move this way and something's in the way and it stops my muscle, or it's a problem, if I'm not feeding that back to my brain and the network, right, I can't improve the next time that I do that. The transparency and the ability to, you've always have been able to some degree, but Ocean's done a good job of making it readily available to the average miner, even if they're not super technical, even if they're running a small operation, to be able to manage how that muscle is used, and they get to say, okay, let's move the arm over here, and then I'm a miner and I say, no, 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 there's a brick wall here. I'm not going to punch my fist into this brick wall. I want to include or exclude these kinds of transactions so I can go around that brick wall, right? It's kind of, and it gives them much more control over how their muscle is used. And in my opinion, the more that's more of a consensus mechanism than just, pools are, right? That gives them, if enough people, 45, 50% of the people decide, hey, we want to mine this way, we want to provide it for this, okay, and the rest of it is spread out over 100 different ways, 100 different types of transactions, etc. That gives us a much stronger consensus as to how, uh, what is and isn't included, which ultimately I think secures the network for the masses outside of the actual mining side as well, right? So it's a challenge, but there's a lot of cool stuff happening with it. There's a big movement on the home mining side, with the BitX and things like that. Scott, I'm super jealous. Scott did a really good job with that, and it was a brilliant move because we're still getting the large scale stuff and mining and hash and network and hash rate, in these big pools and things. So blocks are consistently found, right? But at the same time, it further decentralizes it and taps into that original kind of cypherpunk, idea of, well, I should be able to plug in this code and use my energy at home and use it however I want to. And so we're getting the best of both worlds. Are they kind of lopsided right now? Yeah, but I think eventually those will kind of even out. That's part of a competitive capitalistic kind of business model. And Bitcoin is nothing if not capitalistic. So,
Yeah, the solar miners are super interesting. I had Scott on. I had Want Clue. I think Want Clue is the other part of it that is in BitX, and they both talked about Bitcoin, BitX, and the more I heard about it, the more I was like, oh, that's so brilliant. I love that so much, especially if you can plug it in and get like lightning payouts or anything like that. Because I think with Ocean, if you plug it in outside of the lightning payouts, I think you have to wait till a million satoshis till you get a payout, if I'm correct. Lightning payouts, that's really, really cool to have. And the mining space just evolves so quickly. What do you kind of wait, but one thing that I actually wanted to start with, I think that's important for people to get your background. We're already almost 20 minutes in, but anyways, I'll get it now in. Give the people a little bit of a background, who you are and what are you kind of doing in
sure.
the Bitcoin space?
Well, I mean, as far as where I came from, I've just kind of bounced around, done a bunch of different kind of business development, sales type positions with different companies I did that for about 16, 17 years. I've worked at large companies like Dell. I've run my own companies, doing like business to business collections, which was an interesting endeavor. I worked with a startup, an infection control, infection prevention startup for a while. I really just like exciting, interesting projects, right? Things that are interesting that I hadn't done before. And during COVID, I had lost a company, had some weird things, I guess regulatory things happen that knocked me out of my business to business collections company. And so I lost that in April of 2019. And I had looked for a job, but really hadn't found anything yet. Um, and was really just kind of bored. And I looking back on it, I wasn't willing to look for anything new. I just thought I needed to continue with the skills I had learned and what I had done in the past and just rely on that. Being my age, it's easy to make an assumption that you're like, hey, you're this far along in your career, just stick with what you know. It's worked up to this point, right? But then it didn't work, right? Like nobody was calling me back. People thought I was uh, too qualified. They were worried they were going to hire me and I was going to disappear. And so, when something else better came along, it was just like, I just need something to do, right? And then COVID hit, and things were really difficult for a while. And but that was the jar I needed. It made me. I was just on YouTube most days. I had a little bit of Bitcoin, but I hadn't really discovered it. And then I I just decided I wanted to build something or do something because I was so bored. I was like, I need to do something with my hands. And I have a koi pond in my backyard. So I started learning about hydroponics, aquaculture, using a raised grow bed to grow food and things like that. And so I just started doing that. And it just led to an interesting series of events, right? My neighbor across the street asked about it. It turns out he was a president or the CEO of Midas Immersion. They had just done their first deal with Riot, the publicly traded miner. So I got into immersion cooling, went to work with him. Um, that led to me. I did some things with them and then left and went out on my own and built a couple sites for some independent investors. I got to work on a couple of off-grid mining sites. So I kind of learned about gas production and gas and power production and things like that. And so all of a sudden I was learning again, but it was literally that one. It, my aha moment was I'm really tired of sitting around my house doing nothing. I need to learn something and do something new that I've never done before. And I realized that was the catalyst that got me into this. It could have been Bitcoin. It could have been something completely different. But the problem is I had just locked myself into believing I couldn't learn anything or do anything new. I was in a rut and I was just stuck there. So now it's like I want to talk to anybody and everybody who's working on anything, who's come up with any idea at all, and see if there's a way I can help. So if I can get involved and work with you, great. Even if I can't, let me know what you're doing, and if I can help you find the right person, I'll help you find the right person. There's this really great uh, culture in Bitcoin of helping others, especially those that you see working very hard, who passionately believe in what they're doing, and they're genuine about what they're trying to accomplish. You just want to help those people. Good people want to help those people, and so that is something that I was very addicted to. And so a couple of years ago, I didn't have a project lined up. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. The income stopped coming for a few months, and I had a job offer to go back to kind of a traditional, cubicle 9 to 5 sales job. I just couldn't do it. That's like, I can't go back there. And so that's kind of where I am now. I try to learn a little bit about every single thing I do, just enough to be knowledgeable and to make good decisions, and then help bring all of the puzzle pieces together to get a site up and running or to make a new business happen or whatever the case may be.
It's so funny when you talk to Bitcoiners, more and more of them just become unemployable in the normal space of working, where most, like, let's say 80-90% of people work. They're like, I'm not going back there. Or like, why should I do that? It's also so fun, the coincidence to see in those Bitcoin stories. And I sometimes feel like it's so easy not to see Bitcoin. It's so easy to dismiss it as, oh, it uses too much energy, or dismiss it as, oh, it won't work because of that and that and that, because you always hear that in the mainstream media. And there's so many people that doesn't know Bitcoin, but there's this one moment where you had an open mind and all of a sudden you discovered Bitcoin and you actually researched and are like, oh, like, it's actually a good idea. And I think most Bitcoiners come through those moments. I mean, there are some very early OGs that just waited for something like that, but the majority of them has been really grateful and that they discovered Bitcoin and were open to the idea. It's really cool.
I hear people say it's like, Bitcoin saved me or Bitcoin saved my life or whatever. And that's that's probably about 90% true, right? No matter who says what, um, it's our lives are so wrapped financially around money, just because it is our medium of exchange. It's the way we get the things we need or want to live, and when it's so broken, I mean, I when I started doing the studying, I started listening to someone recommended me to listen to Breedlove's first like 10 or 12, with Michael Saylor. Once I started listening to that and I read, what's it called? Uh, the Creature from Jekyll Island, and started kind of understanding how broken money was, I realized it's like, man, I've been a Bitcoiner or looking for Bitcoin, I guess, for like, I don't know, the last 12, 13 years. I just didn't know it because, even before Bitcoin was around, because, got married in 2004, had our first child in 2006. And I was like, okay, I'd already always heard the rule of thumb, 6 months of, cushion. If you lose your job, that way you can give yourself 6 months to try to find another job. So I was like, okay. So in addition to investments, I had, 6 months of bills paid in the bank. And then 2 or 3 years later, had another kid, and I reevaluated, and I was like, oh, I don't have enough money for 6 months if something happens. So I put more money in, saved more, spent less in investments. And then 3 years later, our bills hadn't changed. The boys weren't costing me any more money, but my bills kept going up. I was like, what is the deal? This is ridiculous. And I did it again, right? Well, it can take you 20 years before you realize what's actually happening if you're not actually looking for the solution, right? So I do feel very blessed and very lucky to have been introduced to Bitcoin when I did. Otherwise, I don't know if how I would have actually found it, because if you go to search for finance and investment books and stuff like, nobody that I had read up to that point talked about inflation. Nobody mentioned it at all, other than, oh, well, inflation is 2%, 3%, so you need to outpace that. That was it. Nobody had ever said anything else about it or explained it, right? Until I, until I got into Breed Love. I know there's a few, but I had never found them because they're not in wide circulation. But in Bitcoin, it's the focus, right? It's one of the key tenets is a deflationary currency. So now you have, you know, Len Alden, you've got uh, what is it? Williams, Hard Money you can't fuck with, right? You got like Larry Lepard's book, which I just finished, which is great, right? Now you have all of these, this library is growing, the education's growing. And I really didn't know a lot about Bitcoin when I decided I'm going all in. I just knew that the dollar was broken. I knew that I would feel better, sleep better at night, regardless of the volatility dollar amount, because I knew the dollar was worthless. I don't care, what the price is of Bitcoin officially today, right? I just know that the dollar is going to be worth less and less tomorrow. So it doesn't matter to me. Bitcoin could stay at, 100, a purchasing value of a certain amount for a year, that it will go up in value, right? So even if it just matches true inflation, that's still conserving my energy and my time and not allowing my time and energy to be stolen. So even if it doesn't moon, if it doesn't, do that like crazy, it doesn't matter. The fact is, I'm not looking to lose over the next 30 years 90% of my energy and time that I save in the bank, because $100 now in 30 years will only buy $3 worth of crap. So it's just a complete mind shift. But that's why it makes us unemployable too, right? Because we're not feeding into the lies, and you see people rushing around in a sales office pretending to work just because they need their money, they need their paycheck. You know what I mean? That it's very freeing to know I'm going to do something of value. I'm going to receive Bitcoin in exchange for that, and nobody can steal my time and my energy. Nobody can take it away from me at that point. That's a very freeing, a very just life altering feeling.
And Bitcoin gives you a lot of options because all of a sudden, if you're stacking consistently Bitcoin, you probably, and for a long time, you probably put some money to the side. So you could probably afford, let's say, 2 months, 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even like 10 years without income. This gives you the optionality to say, I'm no longer willing to trade my life for that work or for that whatever you're doing. I'm quitting that and I'm searching for a better alternative. I want to have a better life. And I think that's something really powerful because a lot of Bitcoiners, like most Bitcoiners get in that, oh, I'm stacking, I have some savings plan set up and all of those things. And this gives you really a lot of optionality and freedom.
It is a savings plan that actually works. And it's growing up in the US, my parents were told the same thing, right? It's you just you go through the system, you get a degree, you get a good job, you do a good job, you save your money, right? And invest a little bit of it, but be careful because investments are risky, right? But you do that and you'll be okay. And that was all a lie. It was all a lie because you're playing in a rigged system and nobody told you originally what the real rules were, right? I mean, there are people, older individuals, right, like my parents' age in their 70s, late 60s, early 70s, that to some degree still believe that, the US dollar is backed by all the gold in Fort Knox. I'm like, wait, read one book, right? And it's you learn about, Nixon, and you learn about going off the gold standard, and you learn about inflation, all this, and you're just like, it's a rigged system. I I don't so I don't want to play in that system anymore. I'm done with that system, right? And then you have no respect for that system. You don't buy into the propaganda, and you just go with what you know and you feel is right. And yeah, it just changes your life. It can change your life if you let it. So
You said something interesting before. You said something back in the days when Bitcoin was still risk on. When did it for you? Is it? I presume for you now you see Bitcoin as a risk off asset. When did it became for you a risk off asset? How do you look at that?
so yeah, I'm definitely not that. There's probably a lot of people out there smart enough to say, we're seeing that shift now and kind of saying economically. I guess it's more of a personal opinion and a personal decision, right? It becomes a risk off for anyone once they get to a point where they understand it, right? So everybody's different. Um, to me, it was in 2022. I had started in September of 21, I think September 21, with this company, and started working with these Bitcoiners and meeting them and just spending time with them, working with them on projects, started studying a little bit. And I was like, I treated it like every other investment. I was like, man, these guys are dumping millions and millions of dollars into these sites, like tens and hundreds of millions of dollars into these sites. They must know something I don't. And so since they're all smarter than me, I'm going to start investing in Bitcoin, but I treated it like an investment. And so I started dollar cost averaging just a little bit in, but then I realized really quickly what little, you know, investments I had in like an IRA, like a Roth IRA or something like in other investment accounts. Bitcoin was very rapidly catching up with that. It was outpacing it through even as a DCA, and it was going down, 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 down. But I just kept reading, kept listening to Seyr and doing more and more research, and but I was still kind of, it's cool, I get it, deflationary, but it's still an investment. It's volatile. At the end of 22, it clicked. I was like, okay, um, if Bitcoin has more than a 0% chance of going up in value, there's 100% chance the dollars I hold will go down in value, right? To me, that's better odds, right? Like rather than holding something that is melting away, I want to hold something that is hard and is going to be there and is, I can depend on, right? So And but I was still looking at it from an investment perspective. So I was like, okay, well, $20,000, it's gone down from 64,000 or 65,000. Man, I think that's the bottom. And so I went all in. Like I cashed out everything else and went all into Bitcoin. And then I cried as it dropped to 16 because I was like, oh no, what have I done to our finances, to my family? I have ruined us. Bitcoin's going to die. It's going to lose, right? I was one of those guys who's like, Bitcoin died today, right? So I cried through the holidays and got through to January. And I just said, you know what? I give up. If I'm not going to win the fiat game, I'm not going to win with Bitcoin. I'm just not going to win. I'm just done. I give up. And so I didn't make any changes. I didn't like liquidate it. I just let it sit. And it started creeping up. And then in January, it was like already back up to 20. It was a really low 25% or really short dip. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now I'm back at break even. So I feel a little better, but I was still very stressed and working. And then it just kept moving and kept moving up and kept moving up and kept moving up. And at that point, I realized it clicked what it was. And it was not a matter of, because of the scarcity built into it, right? That is mathematically a part of it. You can't break that. You either play by the mathematical rules of Bitcoin or you don't get to play. I couldn't put enough money into it. Like my paycheck would come in and I'd seen an interview with Jack Mallers, and he said, I think it'd be great if everybody just put all their money in Bitcoin and then cashed out once a month to pay their bills. And I was like, that sounds good. Let's try that. Some months it worked out, some months it didn't, but more often than not, it was a positive move. I would put money in, it would go up. And by the time a month later I needed to pay my bills, I had additional Bitcoin, right? I was profitable technically. I was paying, and I was like, oh, so this is what they mean by deflationary currency. Any money I have now, or I could spend the money now and pay my bill early, or if I wait even 30 days, I'm paying less, right? So if Bitcoin went up 10%, I was only paying 90% of my bills. I had used money in the past to pay bills in the future, but my cost average for those bills had gone down. And so once that clicked, I was like, I'm in. I'm just in. So transacting in Bitcoin as much as possible, getting paid in Bitcoin as much as possible, paying with Bitcoin as much as possible. You can still report your your stuff to your taxes, right? Still do that. Whatever you want to, you can play it as however you want to do, right? It just gives you the freedom to decide that. And if it truly is a deflationary currency, which it is, then, the longer you hold on to it, the better it is. And so I saw that now as just playing the fiat game. I just had a better tool to play the game, right? I had the trump card. I was able to actually beat the system because I saw how it was broken, and Bitcoin was the way out of it. And so at that point, maybe around late 23, early 24, when I started making some good money, my paycheck would come in. I would immediately empty my bank account. I'd, buy Bitcoin through River. Now sometimes I buy some in the Fold app, right? And just leave it there until I need to use my debit card to pay bills or whatever. And it's some months, yeah, okay, it may look like I lost some money, right? But long term, it's been amazing. Timing for me was lucky too, right? I came in 22 and then had 2 years to build. So I got to experience all of that.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there. And of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in the jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. Interesting. So you live on a 100% Bitcoin
I have
standard,
about
basically?
$5,000 of cash at any given time loaded on my Fold card, and almost all of my other balances are zero.
Wow, I love that. That shows the. I always say, and I'm very similar. I don't have this $5,000. I'm totally on zero.
Well, I have 5,000 just because, like, in the next week or two, right, I have bills coming up due. So it's like I've decided that's just the number to always have there, right? But I think if there's a lot of Bitcoiners out there that they have a lot of Bitcoin, so they're not as worried about it. So maybe they have, they may still have, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 cash plus other investments. If every single Bitcoiner went to zero or as close to zero, or maybe even like, they were 2%, 3%, right? They really did that. You would see and they did it with self-custody. You would see a huge shift in the amount available on exchanges. Some of the paper Bitcoin Ponzi's that I think are kind of coming around and playing right now with some of the exchanges. I don't have any proof of that, but just a feeling. Then I think a lot of that would be exposed. Things would rapidly change across all financial ecosystems. It would just happen almost overnight if we were able to do that. So, and I realized that listening to Mahler's talk about it, right? And I was like, yeah, it's like if you exit the system as soon as you possibly can, you're basically throwing your dollars back at them saying, I don't need this crap. It's worthless. It's not worth anything. And I'd rather do that now before we go to hyperinflation, and we have another, Zimbabwe or Argentina or, all these other countries, because that eventually will happen with the dollar. So I just want to be on the right side of it. I don't know when it's going to happen. So I want to be on the right side of it regardless of when it happens.
That's a good way, because if you're still trying to time the market, which you would do if you are not 100% there where you want to be. So let's say if you have like 20% of your portfolio in fiat cash, not because as a security to pay your bills, but as buying the dip opportunity down the road, you're basically timing the market at that point. If you get that you don't want to have fiat, I mean, maybe you have other investments, that's fine, but you are timing the market if you have cash on the side just for the sake of maybe being able to buy more Bitcoin with that. And timing the market with Bitcoin is
it's dangerous,
dangerous
very
thing.
dangerous. And I think it's interesting because people will say that it's like, well, I want that as an emergency, right? Well, one of the biggest, tools, lopsided rules in the fiat system that people who are rich and successful understand, and people that are broke and poor may never get a hold of, and that's debt, right? How to properly use debt. Um, it is a tool that they're using to keep people down. Well, if you have that much money, cash available, it's a pretty good safe bet that you've got a nice credit score of, 700, 720, maybe higher, right? So if you've got a good credit score, you can get a $25,000, $30,000 credit card tomorrow that they're like, yeah, unsecured debt. Yeah, just take it, whatever, right? And you can take it. Um, I got and you can take it and use it. And that's your emergency fund, right? And then if I have to liquidate Bitcoin later, great. But then I took it a step further after listening to Seyr. And this was it by all other rules of investing and finance. It was the dumbest thing I ever could have done. But I took a $20,000 credit card and I bought Bitcoin down around like 25, 30,000, right? I just bought, so it was like maybe 80% of a coin at the time, something like that. And I took it and I decided I'm going to cash out the Bitcoin I bought with this to make minimum or to make payments on this with the 20% interest rate. And I'm going to do that for 1 year. Now, if I have to liquidate other Bitcoin, if things go crazy and I feel like I'm losing this battle, I'll liquidate and I've lost some Bitcoin. That's fine. But this is a risk I'm going to take. I did that for 12 months and I still had half a Bitcoin by the time everything was said and done because Bitcoin went up. I timed the market correctly with that, right? But then I looked at it, looked at all my other stuff and I was like, oh, but if you don't want that risk, just do a DCA, dollar cost average weekly or paycheck stack. And it almost performed just as well, right? Because at the same time, I was taking money from that I would earn every 2 weeks or every month, and I would put it into Bitcoin and just let it sit, right? Bitcoin is so strong a tool over a long enough time period. I did it with 12 months and I got lucky. But if you did it over 5 or 6 or 7 months, years, or 8 or 10 years, which you could do with a credit card, right? All you're doing is accelerating that collapse. You're taking more and more money out of that system. Every time debt is issued, it's not a bank that has, like, if I have a credit card and I charge $5,000 on it, that's not a bank somewhere that has $5,000 that they're paying on my behalf. And then, oh, well, you better pay us back. It's literally ones and zeros being created out of thin air, right? There's no real dollars backing that debt, right? If you truly want fiat to accelerate and disappear, doing those kinds of things just accelerates it, right? And so I was very radicalized, after reading and studying to the point where I was willing to try that. To be fair, I don't take that much risk on anymore, even though I think that Bitcoin is very close to uh, only upside, very, very little downside. I think we're about to see a switch flip, hopefully. But even so, the nice thing about it is Bitcoin can help you regardless of what your personal risk aversion is, right? If you just want long-term savings and don't want your time and energy devalued, no more savings accounts, just put savings into Bitcoin. If you want, like Seyr said in his presentation, you want to get aggressive, you're going to, leverage your house, you're going to leverage unsecured debt, you're going to sell everything you own, sell all your shares, and you're going to go all in. you can do that, right? You can. But it, I think whatever you do, you just get in as hard as you personally feel comfortable with, and Bitcoin will meet you wherever that is. That's the great thing about it.
Yes. Have you noticed outside of financial things that Bitcoin, since you are full on Bitcoin and have like the Bitcoin Zen found, has that changed the way you make decisions or
Oh yeah,
anything like that?
yeah. What my favorite part, well, there's a lot of good things, right? But my favorite part about it probably is still the financial side. So like, I hired somebody to help me out with a project, and I can't remember what the amount was, but let's say it's like $5,000 for 30 days worth of work, or a couple weeks worth of work or something. And I said, okay, well, yeah, here's my agreement with you, and I'll pay you 5,000 for this work once it's done. And he said, sure. And I had all my money in Bitcoin, and then I waited 30 days, and that $5,000 in Bitcoin was now worth like $6,000. Like it had gone up like 15, 20%, right? And I realized at that point, I was like, oh, okay. Uh, I'm not agreeing even with Bitcoiners, and they don't like this. I'm never negotiating in Bitcoin's price, right? I'm going to negotiate in the worthless fiat currency price, because $5,000 today not only goes down in as little as a month in purchasing power, the Bitcoin actually appreciates. So I got a double whammy. I got an appreciation here, and I got a depreciation on the currency. This spread right here is where I, prosper, right? And that gap is become, and that thing is becoming wider. Those two trend lines are getting further and further apart. And so that was a very big shift. It also made me, in the past, I had only used debt to like, buy buy something if they offered me 0% interest financing. You know what I mean? It's like, well, why would I take an interest on something if, I have the cash to pay for it, and then I just pay for it and I have it and I don't have future bills, right? Well, you take the interest on it regardless, as long as it's less than Bitcoin's appreciation. So if you believe that your debt, Bitcoin's going to stay the same or go up in the amount of time it's going to take you to pay that off, then you keep your money in Bitcoin, right? You take out the debt. So just kind of back to that debt thing, the financial side decisions, it completely changed the way that I operated my business and my general accounting and things like that. And then I was incredibly lucky to go to Madeira for Bitcoin Atlantis in 24, and had a brief opportunity to talk to Seyr for like 10 minutes. And I just said, hey, thanks. Want to tell you thank you. I've taken a lot of your examples, and I'm actually operating my small consultant business on the same standards. And I thought he would say, oh, congratulations, that's great. And he'd walk off because I'm a nobody. And he goes, really? How so? Right? So it's like, he truly wanted to know, right, how I was doing this. And at the end of it, I stepped back and I realized, oh man, Seyr just workshopped my accounting ideas, and he, was nice enough to talk to me. And I was so dumb, I didn't even take a picture with him. I feel bad, but super, surprisingly down to earth for the type of guy that he is. Right. But he truly was interested, and he said, no, no, no. He said, be careful with your percentages, because you're, operating at a much higher, I take money at basically zero or nothing, next to nothing. He said, but you're, he said, I think your principles are correct, you know? And so once I heard that, it was just go, whatever. Put it, go on the standard as hard as you can. Um, and aside from that, the culture around Bitcoin is really interesting from a truth perspective, right? Don't trust, but verify. And so, like, you could say the whole cast iron versus, stainless steel pans is kind of a funny one, right? But like, there's a strong correlation between Bitcoiners and going carnivore, right? Because we look at it and we feel like the truth is, or even if it's not like truth, right? But, and I abhor the phrase "my truth," right? Because that's that's false. Uh, Truth is truth. But for me personally, my, you know, the results I get on carnivore make me feel and look so much better than when I was trying to eat, you know, a mix of vegetables and fruits, and I thought I could have a little bit of sugar every now and then and all that kind of stuff, right? It's like you get on carnivore and you figure out how to feel, and you're like, oh wow, okay, here's results, right? So it's that proof of work that transfers from Bitcoin to all those other aspects of life. So relationships, you stop wasting time with relationships that you know are not good for you and or you're not good for that person, right? Um, and that's personal, work, all of it, right? And so now it's like the people I spend the most time with, whether it be work or personal now, are the people that I met through Bitcoin, right? Especially the miners that I've worked with and actually been in the trenches, been on site, you know, trying to get hash rate up and running, stuff like that. There's like it's like a war. It's like that camaraderie you get when two guys, you know, go to war and they're in a foxhole together trying to survive, right? It's like that. Men need that, right? We all need it, but men especially. We need to know we're part of a team, and that we're willing to put in the work, especially, and we can work harder if we know somebody is there that's got our back, right? And so, I like on the fiat side of my life, right? I've got a few close friends that I still truly love, right? And I've spent a lot of time and really prayer to some degree, trying to say, when are they going to figure this out? Because I want them to have that. Uh, but if they don't, that's fine. I still love them, but it's like there's less and less attachment to them personally. It's a very weird, uh, it's a very weird and strange um, shift relationally, but it's important. You naturally are drawn to people that make you a better person and are willing to put in the time and the effort and the work with you to understand it. It's that whole proof of work shift.
I also saw that Bitcoin. I mean, I don't know if Bitcoin makes you humble or if Bitcoin attracts humble people. I'm not sure. Maybe a mix of both of them. But I got to learn, and maybe just a quick story, because this podcast didn't exist like 1 year and like 4 or 5 months ago. And I came from IT security sales, and I was approaching the podcast similar. I was like, I will write 20 people, and maybe two of them say yes to be on the podcast. So I was like, okay, let's write 50. So I have some more people. And almost all of them
Yeah.
said yes. Almost all of them. And I didn't even had a YouTube channel back. The podcast was non-existing. I was writing them, hey, I start a podcast and I would love to have you on as one of my first guests. And they're like, let's do it. and not even like all the ranges. Even a Jeff Booth came on my podcast when my YouTube channel had like 200 subscribers. So that was almost non-existing. And I've learned through starting this podcast how generous and humble and nice the overall Bitcoin crowd is there. There's always a bad apple in every community, but generally Bitcoiners are super humble and super nice. I'm just curious how you discovered
Absolutely.
that.
And so let's step back and think about what you just said, because I was thinking it's a reoccurring theme that I mentioned when I was saying I felt like I was losing because I kept looking at my bank account, right? And my money would not cover the 6 months worth of emergency fund bills. The fiat system, you came from the sales background. I came from the sales background, right? So, uh, you know, the biggest thing I ever said that I was always told in sales is it's a numbers game. You know, you make 100 phone calls a day. I had a lot of like phone jobs, right? So it's like 100 phone calls a day. I had one job where I had to one call close a $500 transaction on every single call, right? So I would do like 100 calls a day. I would maybe talk to 15 people, and my goal was to close one of those 15 people, right? And I was expected to do that 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, right? It was brutal. And so in any kind of sales job, they always tell you, it's like, you got to be good with rejection, right? It's not personal. Sometimes it is. Sometimes everybody deals with assholes, but sometimes it's not personal. They just don't want it. They don't need it. It's not a fit. And you take that and you move on and you go to the next one, right? Uh, Bitcoin flips that, right? You were doing the same thing. You had that same concept that has been beaten into us by the fiat system, which is you invest in 100 companies as a venture capitalist, and maybe one of them will work, right? Or you buy funds because you can't pick a certain stock, so you're going to let someone who's smarter than you just pick a whole bunch of them, and hopefully it goes up, right? It's such a terrible system. It's just so broken, and it encourages failure, right? It's like, oh, it's okay if 99 of these companies don't work because we're going to have one that does, that's terrible. Why are you okay with a 99% failure rate? That's what the dollar is, right? It's gone down. I mean, on a long enough timeline, the dollar started out at, would buy $1 in 1931 or whatever it was. And now it buys 3 cents worth, right? It's like, you're at that failure rate. Bitcoin flips the script on that. Bitcoin is, no. We're going to be 99%. We're going to win 99% of the time. How do you lose? Well, there's a 1% chance, but we've got 99% uptime. There was one time when the Bitcoin network was going to go down, but core developers caught it and fixed, it's like all this stuff. It's a different attitude, right? So Bitcoiners have that attitude. It's, they see you trying to do something, right, and trying to be successful. It doesn't matter, if you're, like I said, if your intentions are noble, right, you're like, well, I think Bitcoin's interesting. It's changed the lives of a lot of people. And I don't know what your first email was or your message or whatever, but like, it's changed the lives and I want to share that. People are like, oh yeah, I'm happy to. Let's do that. Right. For multiple reasons. People do like to talk about themselves. That's their favorite subject. But on top of that, Bitcoiners want to share that message because they want others to have that same feeling. That's a different shift, right? It's not just like, hey, come work for me and you can make $100,000, right? That guy wants you to come work for him to make $100,000 so he can make $20,000 off of you, right? Bitcoiners are just like, hey man, this has changed my life and it's made my life better. Let me show you how I can make yours better. And Bitcoin gives you the means and the time and the energy to be able to do that. I'm not racing around 8, 10, 12, 16-hour days anymore just to pay my bills. I don't have to do that anymore. And so it completely changed. I love that story, right? Because you're like, oh crap, I got to do a podcast. I got to get a channel set. I got to get this stuff going, right? But it gives you the motivation also to see the potential, right? So seeing the potential in Bitcoin from a monetary perspective is probably what draws, number go up technology is usually what draws people in first, right? But past that, the opportunities to build on it, the openness of Bitcoiners, what other people are doing that's going to really change the world. It's built around Bitcoin, on Bitcoin as a base layer, but really what they're doing is so much more important than that. Uh, that is the shift that you just highlighted right there, right? What can I do to help you? And you're like, every single one of them responded back. I think that's a testament to kind of what Bitcoin can do for an individual as a person, right?
It's fascinating, the Bitcoin community. I thought we talked a lot about mining today, but we actually talked a lot about Bitcoin in general. It's really really cool. I have one question that I asked each and every one of my guests, and the question is always the same one: what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Man, it's hard to say because when you go all in Bitcoin, it's like it consumes your life a little bit. Let's see. I am a big fan. I've been playing guitar since I was 14 years old. Um, It's going on. Oh man, now that I think about it, it's going over 30 years. And I thought for a while I was going to be a professional musician. That was one of the things I tried to do when I moved to Austin. I'm based in Austin, Texas. Um, and it turns out I wasn't very good. So I didn't get to become I played a lot and had a lot of fun. But I realized it's like, I don't really have what it takes to be a professional musician, but I still play the guitar, fairly regularly, but it's just purely for fun and for me. Um, and so I actually got a degree in art. I did some sculpture, some painting, ceramics, all that kind of stuff. And the reason I did it is because it was the only thing that sounded fun in college to me at the time. I was just getting a degree to get a degree because I was told that's what you were supposed to do. But I ended up getting my degree in art because it was fun. I liked working with my hands. I like building things. I like taking shapes, moving them around. Representation, 2D and 3D space is very interesting to me. And then the musical side, right? It's like it's a whole other dimension, right? Music is like a different dimension, and it's interesting how different sounds make us feel differently, right? Regardless of the message or the lyrics. And so that those are things that are very passionate to me. I don't care what you're into, right? But I think we all need something that we do creative purely for the joy of doing it, right? Not actually building anything. It can be reading fiction, it can be art of some type, it can be music, it can be landscaping, it can be architecture, it can be whatever. Um, and I've always enjoyed that when I can get to it because it's good for your soul. It just gives you kind of a break from all of the mundane and gives you the ability to kind of refocus and know that everything's going to be okay. But like I've always loved to do that in my life, but I've never been able to do that because I was always racing against against the fiat machine, right? I was always felt like I was on a hamster wheel. Um, Even if you're not 100% into Bitcoin yet, regardless, figure out something you can do that is just for you like that. It feeds the soul. It's very important. Um, you can't. I think we throw around the term self care a little bit too much um, in our current society, but uh, if you don't take care of yourself physically and mentally, you're not able to take care of anyone or anything. So take a little bit of that time and find something to do. I don't know if that's something I can teach. You can learn from me, but I feel like uh, I'm happy to be that example and just kind of share that message and make sure people are doing that. Right. It's easy if you're a very technical person or developer to dive into Bitcoin, and that may be your fun, right? It's not for me. Looking at lines of code is not for me, but find something. Some of the best projects in Bitcoin have actually come out of that, which I think is amazing, right? Like on the mining side, Gridless, right, and what they're doing in Africa is unbelievable, right? They were like, well, yeah, we can mine Bitcoin on these tiny little hydro dams, and then on top of that, they're providing electrical infrastructure to people that have never had electricity before, right? It's one of the most amazing projects I've seen in Bitcoin. Um, truly changing people's lives for the better. Noster started out uh, there's a company in Austin, Trammell Venture Partners, and um, they have like a once a week sort of thing for their developers that would say it was like, okay, if you have a project that you've been working on that we can't monetize, we can't figure out how to monetize it, and we just want to do it, let's just do it, let's talk about it. Well, one of those projects ended up turning into Noster, right? And Noster is a sovereign. The easiest way to explain it for anybody that's not on it is it's a decentralized sovereign for Twitter, basically, right? The uh, my signature, my keys, like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin I own my messages is kind of the easiest way to say it, right? So if I post it, I can post it. People don't have to look at it, right? But they can't change it, they can't censor it, they can't take it down, kind of thing. And that's it's like my own private Bitcoin, but it's in messages, right? It's messages and files and things that I like to share, right? That was started just from somebody that's just like, oh, this would be kind of a fun project. I wonder if we could do this and use the same kind of protocol for sharing messages, right? That was just a fun thing somebody was doing. Try to do something fun for joy for yourself that has nothing to do with anything else, because you'd be amazed at what kind of stuff can grow out of it. And worst case scenario is you just feel better when you go hit all the other stuff.
And it's a great world, because now it's a little bit outside of Bitcoin, I think, but if you're really passionate about something, no matter what it is, you can probably make money with it on the internet somehow. there's probably a way you can monetize on that if you really enjoy that thing. But it's also good to sometimes have something and not thinking about the monetization of it. Like just have something for the sake of it. So I don't know. For example, I like to play chess. I'm not that good in it, but I really do like playing chess. And you could we have next podcast round we can do like 1 hour and have like a chess game and talk to each other like a chess podcast. But the point I was trying to make is I'm not trying to make money with playing chess. I could, whenever I play, let's open my YouTube channel and talk with people on chess. Like, could be a successful format, could make money, and I could play in tournaments and get really good in it. But I'm not interested in it because I'm so competitive with everything else in my life. And I'm still competitive when I play with other people chess. But I'm not obsessed with being the best in chess. I'm just like, oh, I've like an elo of like 800-900, and I'm okay with that. I'm not. I don't have to be a grandmaster in that. So it's just for me. Chess is almost like an art form. It's a weird way to describe it like that. I think I watched. I watched. Fuck. How's it called? The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, and she also described yeah. And she also described chess as an art form.
Hey, sorry, Robin.
Oh no worries, no worries.
You were saying you were watching it on Netflix?
Oh yeah, I just saw Netflix because she's also describing it as an art form. I don't know how she's called. Beth, is that her name? The girl from the Queen's Gambit.
I loved it.
And and it's really great to have that in your life. Yeah, we have an end routine in the podcast, and it's kind of an end routine of the podcast that. So we have the end routine of the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. But the thing is, we talked about that question actually today a lot, but maybe you can add something to that. And the question from the previous guest is, how has Bitcoin changed your life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Bitcoin gave me really, man, so many ways, I guess, but it kind of gave me my adventurous spirit back, right? Like I had lost my willingness to do things, learn new things, go places, all of it. I was just beaten down by the existing current system. And Bitcoin magically, literally pulled me into a job, like a career that pulled me, that I was forced to do these things, which was great. And then now Bitcoin by itself has given me the means to do what I want, when I want, right? Um, I'm not, I'm not to a point where it's just like, I'm hopping in a jet and going all over the planet yet. Maybe someday, but I'm able to say, oh no, yeah, that's a fun project. I'm going to work on that. Or those are good people. I want to work with those people. Or, no, I really, uh, I don't think I can make that a priority right now, is my nice way of saying, I don't want to work with you, or I don't want to do that. Um, and so giving me the ability to do that is probably really the linchpin that the rest of my life kind of revolves around, right? Most people don't have that chance, and Bitcoin and I'm not, you know, super wealthy by any sense of the term, right? You'd probably be surprised at the amount of Bitcoin I actually have, but it is, um, that shift has made me realize, you know what, life is too short. Bitcoin gave me just enough cushion to make that switch and feel that way, to be able to decide how I spend my time, what I do, who I do it with, where I go, whether I need to go or do something else, right? It's like, it's been interesting. Some of other people out there, maybe even, close friends and stuff, have been, um, they're like, oh, are you getting rude? Are you in your old age, are you getting crotchety and like angry and, you don't like to do, no, and I'm not, I just no longer care to waste time with things that I feel are not important. And in the past, I hadn't been able to do that. Uh, in the past, you have to I had to do so much just to keep, um, a job, or keep the, income, or keep money flowing in to be able to pay for, and all these things that kept coming at me. And they're like, oh, you got to spend money on this, spend money on this. I realized it was Bitcoin was the catalyst to make me realize, I don't have to spend money on anything I don't want. And it made me take a hard, because of how valuable it is, made me take a good hard look at, what do I actually need, right? I don't need everything that the world tells me I need. And then, also looking at people, you're like, okay, well, Bitcoiners are great. Most of them are great. If someone comes to me as a Bitcoiner, I will hear them out, regardless of how ridiculous I think their plan or their idea is. I want to hear them out and see what they have to say. And then, if I'm going to work with them, or want to help them out, right? I know that we're already coming to the table with a certain shared value system, because we're both in Bitcoin, right? That's a huge, um, I don't know, precursor. It's just, it completely weeds out. It eliminates the requirements of weeding out all of the bad stuff. So much of it, maybe about 80 or 90% of it, is weeded out. If you sit down with someone who is officially a Bitcoiner, the other 10% is, you find out they're not a Bitcoiner or maxi, they're a shitcoiner also. And so you just got to be careful. But if they're in Bitcoin, then it's, uh, you know, a lot of those questions and red flags can automatically go away, which makes you more open to opportunities and more open to learning and discovering new things. I think that's probably the biggest catalyst, and that just filters out to all other parts of your life.
I love that. I mean, that's very true on so many different levels. I really love that. Thank you so much, David, for being on the podcast today. It was an honor. It was really cool chatting with you. Before I let you go, where can people find you and ask you questions?
So I'm, at David Branscum, on Twitter. My handle there is, Rebel in Texas, with the B as a Bitcoin logo. So it might be kind of hard to find it that way. If it's just at David Branscum, come and find me. That's probably the best place. I haven't done any articles, but I need to start, taking some of the things I've written down over the last 3 or 4 years, experiences and things, and starting to put that out. So I hope to publish some of those things just through Twitter articles and stuff like that. But, and then you can always, email me directly. I've got a pretty good filtration system. So if you want to email me directly, David at Hydropod, HYDROPOD.io. I opened up that domain. I don't think it's a functioning website, but, I opened up that domain, when I started doing hydro as well, but you can always reach me directly that way if you've got, a business idea or you want some help with a hydro or, immersion mining project, anything like that. Happy to help out.
Really cool. Thank you so much, David. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.